Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven on this Tuesday morning. I hope everybody has had a good weekend. Valentine's Day is coming up. These are some mixed paranormal activity stories from people from Reddit. And I hope y'all enjoyed this collection. Number 1, I'm not really sure what this qualifies as. I've had a few unexplainable experiences in my life. This one really rises above the rest. Maybe someone can help me understand what happened to me. When I was in junior high school, I was a member of a gang. Nothing like what you see in movies, just a bunch of dumb white kids sneaking around late at night causing fairly innocent mischief. One night, we were wandering around random neighborhoods, and it was probably between midnight and 1 a.m. We came across a large party full of high school teenagers. They were drinking and yelling and playing loud music. One of the members of our gang began mouthing off, shouting obscenities at them, and suddenly they were chasing us down the street. Most of my friends jumped the fence or scattered into neighboring yards, but myself and another member ran down the middle of the street. It was fairly dark, but there were street lights and a lot of ambient light. The largest group of the party was chasing us, and something inside me told me to stop and stand still. I knew I couldn't outrun them, as they were quickly gaining on us, so I stopped. The entire group of guys ran right past me, several of them within a foot of me, and tackled the person I was running with. They roughed him up quite a bit and asked him his name. I heard everything that was said, and I watched everything they did. I was waiting for them to turn to me next, but they never did. Instead, they finished with him and they walked back up the street right past me. Not one of them looked at me, even though I was literally standing in the middle of the street, no less than a few inches from them. I waited until they passed, and then I walked over to my friend to help him off the ground. He was shocked to see me. He asked me where I went. I told him I was standing there the whole time. He insisted I wasn't. He said he was running with me 1 second, and I was just gone the next. I recited the whole conversation, and he was incredulous. He insisted I was nowhere to be seen. I've always wondered how this was even possible. Has anyone else ever heard of or experienced anything like this before? Number 2. My daughter has a doll that was the battery operated. It would clap and sing when it heard a loud clap. Also had a motion sensor. The batteries died, so we put it on the shelf in the dining room. Days passed and we never put in new batteries. The shelf is too high for the children to reach, and even if they could, they didn't know how to change the batteries. Anyways, middle of the day, no one was near the doll. It starts singing and clapping, only for a few seconds. Weird, but it stopped. Then randomly at nighttime, you just doze off and this bitch would sing loudly and scare you awake. Laugh out loud, but it's not that funny. So I investigate the doll and get nothing. I clap loudly at it and it doesn't activate. I wave my hands for the motion sensor and nothing. I put it back on the shelf and walk back to my room. The damn thing goes off again. What the hell? I take the doll down and throw it in the outside trash bin and go back to sleep. The next day, the doll is on the couch in the living room. The kids are 3 years old and 4 years old. I know they couldn't have gotten that doll out of the big trash can. There's no one else who could have gotten it. As I approach the doll, it starts singing and clapping again. I freak out and ask the kids anyways. They say no. So I turn on my fireplace and I throw the doll in. Burnt bitch. Then my daughter brings me a pink teddy bear, tells me he is not her friend anymore, and throws him into the fireplace too. The black smoke that rolls up the walls and into my house was crazy. I had to open up all the windows. Evil doll gone, unfriendly pink teddy bear gone too. My daughter still talks about the doll to ask me why I burned it. I told her it was haunted. Thanks, bye. Number 3. I, male 18, who stays up way too late at night, lives with my parents, mom, and stepdad, who I call my dad, which will be referred to as dad from now on. He goes downstairs late at night to eat food. He has problems sleeping and deals with insomnia, so he gets hungry at night. But the thing is, he always goes down at 1:34 a.m., always on the dot. As soon as it hits 1:34, the door opens and he walks down, without fail. He always stays downstairs too, for what could be hours at a time. The latest he's ever stayed down was for 4 hours. I once was downstairs in the bathroom, and when I walked out, his eyes were shut. It wasn't sleepwalking because you could interact with him, talk to him like normal. But I walked back into the bathroom and peeked around the corner, and I saw him. He looked like a robot moving around and doing things so robotically. I walked out and tried saying goodnight to him, but when I received no response, I turned around and he was facing me and just standing there like a board, mouth open, like he was trying to say something, but it was wide open. I was obviously freaked out and thought it was a joke he was pulling, and I just walked back while still facing him. I turned the corner and heard shuffling, like he was rushing something. When I got back to my room, and for clearance, I sleep on my bed the opposite way my bed is facing, and on my stomach. So I'm laying at the foot of my bed, staring out, and my door is across the room. So I'm facing my door. Normally the lights in the hallway are off, but I heard the light switch turn on and looked out my door and saw feet by the bottom of them, the shadow under the door invading my room. It was there for 10 minutes. My eyes started watering for how long they were open because I didn't want to close them at all cost. When it leaves, I could not for the life of me fall asleep, not because I was terrified, but I physically couldn't. In the morning, when my mom's alarm went off at 6 a.m., I jumped out of bed as my mom left her room and hugged her. I saw my dad laying on his bed, but he was looking at me with the same face he had when I saw him in the kitchen that night. Every night it still happens, and I never left my room during the period of time, and I am terrified if someone does. I never seen anything around the house that's ghost related, but my parents and sister have, and they all heavily believe in ghosts. I never talked to him about this because I am terrified to even think about it. Number 4. I posted this before, but my flair for dramatization got it removed, so I'll do my best to keep things short and clinical this time. I'd never seen a ghost before this, only felt them. But this one morning, when I was still with my ex, I started hearing a very insistent voice. I thought it was him, so I turned over to tell him to knock it off, and saw we weren't alone. An older man I had never seen before was leaning over him, whisper yelling in his face to wake up. I made eye contact with him, which I can only describe as being eerie as hell. In that moment, he was just gone. I immediately woke up my ex, who said he had heard the voice telling him to wake up, but thought it was me. When I described the man I saw, my ex said it sounded a lot like his great-grandfather, who passed when my ex was just a little kid. I like to think he just had a message for his great-grandson that unfortunately was not relayed, but just my theory. Number 5. When I was growing up, we would go and visit my grandmother on the east coast of Florida about once a month. So I was just as comfortable in her little town as I was my own. Even at the age of 10, I knew all the back roads and shortcuts and scenic drives. One afternoon, my mother and I were in the car and we were taking a leisurely ride when she took me farther down a known road that I have never recalled being on. and then she took a left and got on a road that ran through the salt marsh. As we were going along, she is sharing stories about the swamp ape and other local legends. When I look up and say, "Oh, I know where we are. I recognize this area. I came down here with Grandma once." My mother was confused because my grandmother had not driven in years. She didn't even own a car. I proceeded to tell her about coming here and describe a big Victorian house on the corner overlooking the marsh. As we approached the curve, I said, "Here, it's right up there." My mother pulled over, and there was no house on the hill as I remembered it. "Where's the house?" I asked. You could clearly see that at one point there had been a homestead there. There were remnants of stone walkway and a retaining wall. In the way the trees were spaced, and the ground leveled out. I want to describe the two-story house in full detail, from the gingerbread wood carving on the porch swing. My mother kept asking me questions, and I kept answering them. I told her that I had come with Grandma to visit a friend who was ill, and that had brought food for the family, and that I remember playing with a little girl on the front porch and swinging in the swing with her. It was then my mother told me that the house that used to be there had burned down in the 1940s. Wait, what? Rickard said the 1940s? And that, yes, the lady who had lived there had been a friend of my grandmother's, and that she, my mom, had a very distinct memory of visiting here with her mother when the lady had been ill and bringing food. She then said, "I always wondered who the little blonde girl was that I played with on the porch that day. I asked my mama on the way home if she would bring me back to play with the little girl, and she was perplexed because there was no young children in the home at the time." Instantly, we were both covered in goosebumps when we realized that approximately 20 years before I was born, I played on a wraparound porch with my own mother. Number 6. I'm new to the subreddit, but I have quite a few stories to tell. I seem to be a magnet for this stuff, I don't know why. Here's one of a few that I'm going to tell you. I'm 15 in the story and my brother is 20. Sorry if that story feels like it's bouncing around. Writing was never my strong suit. I'll work on my structure. So, my brother used to own his old rifle. It was made in 1936. It was used by the Russian military in World War II. Now, it didn't take long for odd things to start happening. I mean like day one, night one. Now, so he gets the rifle home, and we're both nerds about history, so we were examining the rifle, looking up markings, etc. Later that night, I was trying to fall asleep. I had my door open to my room when suddenly I watched a black shadow walk past my door straight what appeared to be a wall. Now, I'm a very logical person, even though so I thought it was my brother going to the bathroom next door, but I never saw the light go on and heard the fan because he hits both. So I waited a bit to go and look into the bathroom, but no one was there. Went to my brother's room and he's gaming away with his headset on and claims that he had never gotten up. Now, this was the start of it as the summer kicked on and school was a whole mess of stuff started happening. I swear, in the middle of the night, it would sound like someone in boots marching in the kitchen. We would find cabinets being left open, even watched it happen a few occasions, sometimes even hearing them being slammed shut. If you're watching TV late at night, it would feel like someone was right on top of you, like such a heavy presence on you. I even had things thrown off my desk, and had this one toy tank that I set on my desk, and I would always find it across the room against the wall, along with my bed being messed up. Now, most of this happened at that night or when no one was home, but we all had encounters with the shadow and the marching cabinets. But I am the only one with a trashed room, per se. Now, one last thing, my sister, 12, seems to be quite aware of spirits being present. Like we go somewhere that was haunted the first time and could tell you who was there and how they died, type of deal, or the guide would tell you. She refused to touch the rifle, told us to get rid of it. Day one said there were 3 attached to it. One was a shadow, which seemed so obvious now. One was a female soldier who doesn't know she's dead, and a small kid who didn't seem like a kid. Now, some of this part is a blurb. According to her, she would hear the boy kid in my room running around, jumping on my bed, and he would apparently do this when I left because he was happy I left the house. According to her, he talked to her once and said I reminded him of a soldier in his village and I was a bad man. Number 7. When I was in college, me and a few friends made our own Ouija board on the back of a metal board. One night in the attic of our large sorority house, while we were playing on it, a spirit started moving the glass cup across the board. When we asked the spirit's name, it spelled out Gramps. It then spelled out the last name of another girl in our sorority and help her. We found out the next day that the girl whose last name was spelled out had gone home suddenly because her grandfather had just died. We later found out that she called him Gramps. She also suffers from bulimia. Other scary things happened. We played on that Ouija board. To this day, 30 years later, I refuse to have one in my house. Alright, some of those stories gave me chills, I can tell you that. I love y'all so much. I hope y'all enjoyed these stories. Thank you to the Redditors who allowed me to read them to you. I will see y'all on Thursday. Happy Valentine's Day tomorrow. Remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross.
Hi everyone, it's Curious Raven with Thursday's video. This is going to be Thoughts with Curious Raven. I'm going to read one story today and give you my thoughts. I hope everyone is having a good week. I need some help. I need the opinions of y'all here in Reddit on this one. I have had many ghost or experiences with even other entities before, but this one in particular has stuck with me and been on my mind ever since it happened about 6 months ago. I was going to a friend's house after we had agreed to hang out. It was a big house, one of those old 1800s type of houses, dead center of town almost. I had a key, so I let myself in because I figured she was upstairs on the 3rd floor and wouldn't hear the front door if I knocked. I called her name and no answer on the 1st floor, so I began to walk upstairs to the 2nd floor where I could hear where she could be more clearly. It sounded like a woman was quietly talking on the phone in one of the bedrooms on the 2nd floor, the one I was on. So naturally, I assumed that my friend was behind one of the closed doors and that I didn't want to be rude. I figured she knew I was there, but was finishing up a phone call and needed a minute. So I sat on the ground against one of the hallway walls, directly looking at the closed door of the room I thought she was in. Directly looking at the bottom of the door, there was enough space between the door and the floor to see shadow footprints move from left to right, right to left. I assumed they were hers. She was still talking on what I thought was a phone as I watched the set of shadowy footprints turn into two pairs. I had seen 4 shadow feet, 2 pairs, walk side to side the floor. I suddenly thought, well, maybe she isn't on the phone. Maybe she's talking to someone in there. She's not alone in the room. Still, I didn't want to be rude and interrupt, especially if another person was in there with her. Then it happened. A loud smack of a hand hit the floor underneath the door, still behind it. It was a shadow of a hand. It was a real hand, only a pale magenta color. I had seen smack its palm on the floor beneath the door. It had to be directly behind the door for me to see it, as plainly as I did. Like, it was definitely meant for me to be startled and pay attention. The pale magenta color startled me more than the loud smack. It almost looked like the steam that comes off your skin when you get out of the hot shower, bright magenta, somewhat matching the pale magenta of its skin. Then a crooked scream of a face peeked through the space between the door and the floor, looking directly at me in this hateful expression of a silent scream. It was not my friend's face. It was a face of a woman I didn't know. There was no sound, not even talking I'd heard before, but it felt like I could feel the scream this face was making and hear it in a weird, silent sort of way. Hard to explain. And it was directed at me. Its eyes were like normal eyes, except they were almost ablaze in appearance, and the pupils were huge, surrounded by hot pink magenta irises, and they were pissed. Its hair looked like the hair of Lava Girl. Skin a pale magenta, terrifying magenta eyes, and her skin looked steamed. I jumped up, scared as fuck of what I had just clearly seen as plain as day. Ran down the stairs. I ran into my friend who was coming up the stairs from the first floor while I was running down them from the second, meaning she was never behind the door in the first place. And why didn't she answer when I called her when I first got here? She believed me. A lot of weird things had been seen in the house over the years, but that did little to comfort me. So, still I think about this experience. What does it mean? What was it? It was human in appearance minus the monochrome magenta and seemingly fiery look. Why was it silently screaming at me? Why did it smack its hand down like that? What the actual fuck? I would love to hear what anyone thinks. If they maybe have answers or any other perspective, please tell me what you think. Edit. So, there's this room in the basement from the original house in the 1700s that is totally filled up with dirt, but it didn't get filled up with dirt until the late 1800s. It was clear it was a coal chute room to anyone that even moderately examined it from the outside of the house. But like I said, it didn't get filled up with dirt until the late 1800s. Why? You know. So I did a little digging and read some stuff that sometimes when a murder would happen in a town back then, like this one, that would have been fairly populated smack in the middle of town, people would get rid of the bodies via the coal chute or vice versa. Could be one of the unlucky houses to get a body dropped down their coal chute in the attempt from someone else trying to get rid of the body. The man who owned the house around the time invented projectors or something. Edwin Staten Porter, by the way. Anyway, I've had this running theory that either someone died in the house via by fire and was disposed via coal chute, killed and then disposed by fire and coal chute, or a body was dropped through the coal chute from someone else. Either way, somebody filled the room with dirt, which they'd have the money to do to cover up the evidence whether the inhabitants were guilty or not. By the way, this house likes to randomly catch fire sometimes, like the kitchen. And way back when Edwin Staten Porter and his wife used this house as like an extra house closer to where her family lived, their only child died at 22 months old. in the room I called mine. Naturally, I expect nothing less. I had no knowledge of this when I picked my bedroom out. I have seen plethora of entities in the house, all different vibes, but this one stuck with me. I really appreciate your input and wouldn't mind picking your brain more. Well, there are many stories I have read. People have seen blue entities, purple entities, and I don't think they're human, to be honest. My opinion, I feel like they are like supernatural entities from a different timeline or universe, and they just randomly pop into ours sometimes, or even an alien, to be honest. Because when I see a ghost, they're like normal human, like a human is in front of me and I'm talking to you. But we don't talk to each other through our voices. We talk to each other through our minds. And just, yeah, that's my thought on it. If it hasn't happened again, good. I hope it doesn't, because that's really, really scary. You might want to walk around your house and sage it, or your best friend's house, or whatever. You can always Google how to cleanse and sage a home and just get the stuff and read the directions and do it exactly how it says. And have pure intention into it that they can leave and then they're not welcome here, and put your intentions, whatever intentions you have for the spirit in the house, you say it out loud and as you're cleansing with the sage and everything. And mean it. Be direct. Put your foot down. That's my advice. But that is a crazy story. I'm very sorry you had to see that. That would freak me out too. But I hope this helped a little bit. All right, everyone. I will see y'all Saturday for Creepypasta Day. But until then, remember it's scary out there. So stay safe. Please like and subscribe.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross.
Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven on this Tuesday. I have a guest narrator with me today, Lance's Creepy Readings. Please go check him out. He is an outstanding narrator. I hope y'all had a good weekend. I hope y'all enjoy these stories. Number 1. I met my girlfriend at the start of the school year, 2023, and we became pretty close friends. And after a while started dating. My girlfriend has several ghosts in her house, and we talk to them every once in a while. There's a family of 7, 2 in the attic, and several uncounted in the basement. I myself have around 3 in my own house. The one thing that intrigued me was the family. They were alive around the 1850s, I'd assume, so they'd been around a while. The family consists of 2 parents, 1 son, and 2 daughters, the father's sister, and the mother's sister. Their name and ages: mother, Becca, 28 to 29, father, Luke, 30 to 32, eldest daughter, Jess, 15 to 16, son, Jake, 12 to 13, youngest daughter, Emma, 5 to 6, Luke's sister, Kara, and Becca's sister, Abby. This family interests me because I'm a big FNAF fan, and the father got drunk on 18 shots one night in various different ways and killed his entire family. His sister did suicide, and Abby died of old age. Number 2. Here's a couple encounters I've had in my bathroom that I will never shower in ever again. I always feel as if something is in the bathroom. It's down the hall from my room, and I can see it from my bed. This is the first bathroom. My other bathroom is in my room. No issues with it. So here it goes. One night, I was showering in there, and I was closing my eyes, washing the shampoo out of my hair, when I heard my name being called, and I thought it was my husband calling me from the living room. I started yelling from the shower, but he didn't respond. Then I continued to shower. Well, the next time I closed my eyes, this calling was very close to my ear, and more of a whisper. I was very scared and freaked out. Got out immediately, went to ask my husband if he had been calling me, and he had his headphones on playing games on his computer, saying he wasn't calling me at all, and never heard me calling for him either. I have never heard anything calling my name or even talking. So that was the first out of all the experiences I've had. I'll never shower in that bathroom again. The second thing that occurred in there was my daughter was showering and had the door open, and like I said, I could see the bathroom from my bed, which was where I was sitting. All of a sudden, I started seeing the light dim and the door just slams, and you have to close the door pretty hard to shut it all the way because there's a rack to hang clothes on it. It slammed so hard it knocked the towel holder off the wall, falling and closing the light off. My daughter screaming, I ran to the door and I couldn't open it, as if it was locked. That was the most disturbing occurrence in that bathroom. My daughter was shaking and I finished washing her up and got her the hell out of there. I have also seen a shadow figure during the day go into that bathroom, which is just off-putting to say the least. What do you guys think about this? Number 3. Hello. I want to describe what I've experienced that convinced me of having lived in a haunted place. Important to say, though, I'd never seen a ghost or anything of that kind. When I moved into my first apartment, I've experienced a lot of knocking at night. Since I was up late a lot, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., playing games online and talking, I've had a nearly nightly basis knocking coming from the corner of my living room. Usually it was 3 knocks in succession, each separated by quarter to half a second. I thought for a longest time that it was my downstairs neighbor hitting on the ceiling because I was talking at night. This kept going on for 2 to 3 years straight. Only when I moved out, I realized when moving my IKEA TV stand that by applying pressure on the top wood piece, it would give off the exact knocking sound, making me realize it came from that thing all along. It was too rhythmically timed, as if I could have been the wood expanding from heat, cold, or moisture. This was the first time I truly believed in some kind of spiritual activity. I used to find it interesting, but never paid actual belief in it. I've also had those knockings happen on a new fridge, which I also bought when I moved into that place. But that I rationalized by how I thought a fridge works, though at times it were really hard knocks, nearly a banging popping, but usually not timed. After I moved, I slept in the same room as the kitchen, and at night again, there were these noises coming from the kitchen, also same kind of knocking. But it usually appeared when I left the bed to go to the bathroom. One would think my movement might have caused some kind of effect on the wood in the kitchen, even though it was concrete. Now the weird part is that even my intent, which I tested numerous times, by slowly lifting myself up in bed, would instantaneously result in a knocking. I'm truly convinced that those were real paranormal events. Maybe I should mention that it happened on 2 continents, Europe and North America, of which I lived for several years each. Now I'm back in Europe for 3 years, and I haven't had an experience ever again like that. I also tried communicating in the second place I've lived in, asking for a sign or a knock on my command, but to no success whatever. My question, which is why I created this post, does or did anyone else experience the same? Do you think this has followed me, or is this considered a generic form of haunting? I'd appreciate any kind of constructive response. Thanks. Number 4. I need someone to comment. On Wednesday the 17th, I woke up to blood coming from my toilet directly into my room. It was dripping into my room. It was not my family's blood. It wasn't animals. We're in the kitchen. Animals consist of 3 dogs and 1 cat. Then on Thursday of the 18th, my parents heard footsteps in our kitchen. Someone please help me. It was not my footsteps or my sister's footsteps. Then on Friday the 19th, I was on the phone at exactly 12 a.m. and my Lexus started buffering. I listened to rain sounds as I sleep, like an old TV that was not connected to anything. I am quite scared. I am baptized and I pray every night. I need help, thanks. Number 5. I'm a truck driver, and I'm only home on the weekends. My wife has been experiencing noises coming from the basement, knocking, banging, things dropping like sounds. Then she's now hearing voices. In the bathroom light going on and off while it's in the shower, 1 off occurrence. And to top it all off, our front door was wide open this morning. It was locked, and she tugged it before bed. We have 3 dogs that would definitely let us know if there was someone physical in our house. We have multiple deceased loved ones, and we think it's one of them letting us know they'll always be with us. I'm definitely setting up a camera on interior of the front door. Number 6.
About 6 years ago, me, my wife, and our 2-year-old moved into a new house. As soon as our son could talk, he would tell us a man in the wall of his room would talk to him every night. While this was going on, I woke up one night to find the glowing white head of an elderly woman hovering about 12 inches over my sleeping wife's face, staring at her. No body, just the head. I was terrified and I couldn't move. I may have dreamt it, but I'm pretty sure that it was real. Both my wife and I grew up going to church. Different denominations, but still went nonetheless. As adults, we aren't particularly religious. Shortly after this, we had a priest come and bless our house, especially our son's room. The weird feelings and occurrences almost completely stopped. We were there 2 years, and moved to a 10-year-old house. This house feels happy, and we've had no issues. Our son doesn't remember the man in the wall.
Number 7.
3 years ago, it was one of my friend's birthdays, and we started early around 12, and went all out till 3 a.m. One of my friends asked if I could watch their dog while they go to France. I agreed, and they showed me around the next day. When I went over, I had that gut feeling that something else was there, other than the dog. So they showed me around, and it was a tiny cute house with a garden. They forgot to give me their house keys, and it was like 90 degrees. So I texted them, and they said that there was an AC I can take out from the outside. I took it out, and got into the locked house so that I could let their dog out. I have a feeling that this will be the reason of what happened that night. I worked in a restaurant and I got done at around 11 p.m. So we had a group hangout and talked about some scary stuff that happened to each other. One of the women told me that there were 2 different ghosts that live in the house that I was staying at. One was a sweet old lady, and the other one was not a nice guy. The not-so-nice guy was mostly in the main bedroom, and she said that it was best to not go in there, or it'll make the ghosts mad. But I already did because the couple said that was where the password for the Wi-Fi was. So I went to the house and let the dog out, and hung out. Then I went to bed and had my music playing, so the dog came up on the bed to lay next to me, and it's about 1 a.m. 1 minute later, the dog jumped off the bed, and then I felt the mattress on the left side, which I was sleeping on, move up and down aggressively. Note that this dog was a medium size, and 8 years old. It lasted for a few seconds, but it was something I wouldn't forget. I told the couple of what happened, and they said that never happened to them once, but they have occasionally seen things move. I had 4 more nights left of this, but nothing else happened. I'm guessing it was 'cause I broke into the house to let the dog out.
Okay, everyone, I hope you loved these stories. Thank you so much for Lance joining us today in this collab. Please go over to his channel. I'm going to link it down below and give him some love. I love y'all so much. I will see y'all Thursday, but until then, remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe. Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven. Today is Creepypasta Saturday. This story is by Plain Delicacy, and it is called I Am Being Terrorized by Small Children. So, I'm an author, and I've been struggling to find any sort of inspiration for a book. I went on writer retreats, read tons of books, scrolled through endless Reddit threads for anything that would spark an idea, but no matter what I do, nothing seems interesting enough to write about. On top of this horrible writer's block, my grandmother passed away, leaving her old house back in Virginia to me. It's a miracle if you ask me. Getting the house, I mean, not her dying. I'm not heartless. I know that the change of scenery was going to help, but boy, was this going to be the worst possible idea I had. A few weeks after the funeral, we met up with some lawyers who arranged the paperwork and paid the fees for the house. I finally could move in. My parents came up with me to help with unpacking. There weren't many renovations to do for the house, just some peeling wallpapers and leaky pipes. We got new bedding, new curtains, cleared away all the cobwebs, and started to put my things in after putting my grandma's things in the attic. After a week of making the house livable, my parents left. If I'm being honest, I was glad they came up with me. The house always gave me the heebie-jeebies. Like, I love my grandma, but the house was its own thing. But it felt good having my own house. The next thing on my list was finding a job, because the whole author thing was not bringing in any money. The incident happened on a random Saturday, a few months after moving in. I hadn't gone into work, so I could write. It was still early morning when I heard thunder in the distance, and by lunchtime, a storm was hitting the town. I could hear the trees beating against the window. Garbage bins rolled in the streets, and wind chimes hit each other with great force that I thought they would break. I was staring out of the window, looking at the street, when the room lit up with a flash, and then the lights went out. Half-heartedly, I got up from the sofa and went down to the basement to switch on the circuit breaker back on. The rain hit the glass panes with such force, disguising the knocking on the front door for a second. But they could be heard during the pause of the thunder. Slowly, I made my way towards the door. By the time I arrived at the front door, the visitors were getting impatient. My heart broke as soon as I opened the door. In front of me stood two children, who couldn't have been older than 9 years old, and barely wearing any clothing that would keep them warm during the storm. It was a girl that spoke first, asking me to use my phone to call their mom, to let her know that they would be home soon. I had so many questions. Why would these little children be out alone in a storm with no phone? What mother would allow her children to leave the house without proper clothing? Not once did they look at me throughout the whole encounter, but nevertheless, I moved aside to let them pass through. I made my way towards the living room with the children behind me. Once we arrived, I asked them for their mother's phone number, and I started to dial the number they gave me, but no one answered. I asked the girl to tell me the number again in case I misunderstood her, but the number was the same as before. So I suggested that they wait out the storm here, and once the storm is over they could leave. There was no reply, but I took it as a yes. The children needed a clean clothes, fearing that they would catch a cold if they stayed in their wet clothing. I told them to follow me as I went upstairs towards the bathroom to get them some clean towels. After getting the largest towels I had available, I grabbed 2 sets of pajamas and showed the children my room and the guest room, so they had some privacy as to change. The children's eyes still never left the floor, not even to take the clothes from my hands. Whilst they changed, I went into the kitchen to prepare some hot chocolate and some biscuits I found in the cupboard. After a few minutes, they came down to the kitchen and sat at the table as I placed the steaming mugs in front of them. While the children were drinking, I went back to the living room to try their mother again. This time I got an answer. It was an older gentleman. I told him that he hadn't need to worry about his children, since they were safe in my kitchen drinking. I informed him that I wouldn't allow them to leave until the storm has passed, but he seemed confused as I mentioned children, telling me that his children haven't been 9 ages and his grandchildren didn't even live in my area. I told him that I had the wrong number and apologized before ending the call. I walked back to the kitchen to ask the children to write the number down this time so I don't keep dialing the wrong numbers. I walked into an empty kitchen. The children nowhere to be seen. Called out for them and searched the lower level for any sign of them. I searched all the cupboards, closets, thinking that maybe they were pranking me, but I couldn't find them. Whilst I was in the living room searching, I heard a loud crash coming from the kitchen. Annoyed, I walked towards the kitchen and was greeted with all the contents of my cupboards on the floor. At the same time, I could hear laughter and footsteps running up the stairs. I ran out of the kitchen and up the stairs, leaving the mess for me to clean up after I found the children. To give you a small layout of the second story of the house, the whole level is connected via a long corridor with rooms on either side of it. There was a bedroom, bathroom, and storage room, with the entrance to the attic. As I was walking past the storage room, I noticed that the door was opened and noticed that even the attic hatch was open when I entered the room. I carefully climbing up the ladder and switched on the light bulb, even though it barely gave out any light. Apart from old clothes and books I got from my parents' house and old items my grandmother would store, the attic was empty. The sound of thunder filled the silence of the house as the storm started to grow stronger than before. A flash of lightning lit up the room, revealed the shadows of the children climbing down the ladder. I followed them down the hatch and was guided towards the entrance of the house by their laughter. I found them waiting for me. They were looking up at me with a horrific grin on their face. A chill ran down my spine as I finally could look at their faces for the first time. Their eyes were black. I'm not talking about their iris being black or metaphorically looking black. Their whole eye was black. It was as if I was looking at an empty eye socket. By looking at their whole face, it looked like they completely transformed from those small, weak children, these horrifying creatures. Their skin looked almost translucent and was decorated with purple veins, remind me of the lightning from outside coming from their eyes. Their bodies looked tiny compared to their already large clothing. Their eyes never left my face, following my every move as I slowly backed away towards the kitchen, where I could make my escape through the back door. I never broke eye contact in fear of them disappearing, but once I arrived in the kitchen, they disappeared. That night I couldn't sleep. Their eyes remained ingrained into my memory. They were there every time I closed my eyes. They were in the shadows near the storage room. And now I'm trying to figure out what those things were. I came across the thread, so maybe someone had a similar experience to me. Update. I came across some stories similar to mine. To my understanding, they're called black-eyed children and are creatures that shouldn't be messed with. Everyone was saying that you shouldn't do what they ask or let them into your house, so it will lead you to be cursed and haunted by these children until you die. I'm not one that believes in curses or the spiritual things, but now as I write this update, hiding in my wardrobe, I can't help but feel stupid for not believing in what people were telling me and didn't try and get help. I don't know what to do. I can't call the police because who would believe me when I tell them that I'm cursed by some little children? 5 weeks have passed since the events of that day. I had slowly started to forget what had happened, and I was back to my normal routine going to work, writing, and even made friends with my neighbors, and I would occasionally go for dinner to their house. They are a sweet old couple who make a mean chicken pot pie. Anyways, one night I heard knocking coming from upstairs whilst I'm making dinner, dismissing it as just branches banging against the house from the wind. It is winter after all. I continued to make dinner, not continued, but I ignored it again. The more times I ignored the knock, the more persistent they kept knocking. They kept becoming. Eventually, I started to realize maybe the knocking was not the wind, so I tried to hunt down where the sound was coming from. As I went up the stairs, I started noticing that the knocks were forming a familiar tune. I followed the sound into my bedroom and entered the room. Switched on the light. "Did you miss us?" was written in black substance on the mirror. The light bulb exploded, and I was left in a dark room. The door behind me slammed shut, and the knocking was replaced with the sound of children's laughter. I could feel the room spin as "Come Play With Us" was being chanted over and over. Their sound was bouncing off the walls from all directions. It made my ears ring, and I started to feel lightheaded. Something started to trickle down my nose. Smell of metal filled my eyes, filled my nose, making me feel nauseous. The last thing I remember before blacking out was the children looking over my body and telling me to play with them forever. I was alone when I woke up, but I could still hear the children laughing outside. So I locked up my room and pushed my chest of drawers in front of the door. Went in the wardrobe, where I'm hiding right now. The house suddenly feels very quiet and calm compared to earlier. All I can hear is my heartbeat thumping at my chest, and the sound of blood rushing through my ears. There's the faint sound of something scratching the bedroom door, like some kind of animal is trying to come inside, but I'm safe here. I have the chest of drawers. They're very heavy. I could barely move them myself, so it keeps anything from coming inside. I have nothing to worry about. I may be imagining things, but I can hear something moving the drawers aside. I want to look out of the wardrobe. The thought of leaving the only place of refuge I have left in my house is terrifying. The door just opened. I need help. Please, someone help me. This is a really good story. I like the story of the black-eyed children. I have read, in my spare time, many of these stories. Really creepy. And some people say that they have had experiences with these black-eyed children in real life. So if you ever see black-eyed children at your door, and they want to come in, you tell them no and go away and lock the door. Don't invite them inside your house. I hope y'all have a really good weekend. I love y'all so much. I'll see y'all on Tuesday. But until then, remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe. Howdy y'all, it's Curious Raven. We are back with Creepypasta Saturday. I hope everyone is having a good weekend. We have 2 creepypastas today. The first one is by Eric Owens. It was sent to me through my email. Today was my first day on the force, and I was assigned to look into an old abandoned trailer park. Apparently people went crazy or went missing there. Mostly the ones that lived there are people were dared. But as I was looking stuff up on my computer, all I got was errors or buffering. So I shut off the computer to reset it. Until I looked over, I saw an old paper about who used to work on the case before me sticking out of the box. As I looked it over, all I got was her new address. When I got there, I saw it was an insane asylum, so I walked to the front desk and asked them about her. Eventually, I was allowed to walk into her cell to see writing all over the walls that said, "It's out there watching us. Beware the shadow man." I had no choice. On repeat, with her dead body hanging from the ceiling in the middle of the room with a knocked over chair beside her. So I yelled out for help as I set the chair back up. Once I cut her down, I laid her gently to the floor. When we checked her pulse, it was already too late. So I just took pictures of what she wrote on the walls and left. Once home, I kissed my daughter on the head as I said, "I love you, sweetie," and I shut her door. From there, I went into my office to put my evidence up on the wall. As I said to myself, great, all I got is this person could live there, and a psychopath that is very good at manipulating people. So the next morning I went to the trailer park to see what I could find out. Once I pulled up, it just looked like it hasn't been touched in years. I said to myself as I was walking, this is weird. I know other people have been here before, but yet the only thing that has touched this place is Mother Nature itself. As I was looking through some of the old stuff that was left there, I saw something in the corner of my eye. So I quickly turned around with my hand over my holster. As I saw it walk away, I yelled out, "Hey, stop, police. I got some questions for you." When I looked around, I saw nothing. Later that night, I woke up sweating and scared. But as I did, I saw my daughter standing over me with a metal baseball bat. All I could say was, "Mel, sweetie, you're..." Before she hit me across the head. Before she could hit me again, I rolled out of the way, hitting the floor. Instead of finishing me off, she hit her mother with enough momentum that it burst her head wide open. As I got to the stairs, she discharged 2 bullets into my leg. As I fell down the stairs, I snapped my neck, as she just laughed. She then looked up at the shadow man as she said, "Are you proud of me, my friend?" As the shadow man nodded. She shot herself in the head. Once the cops got there to check, thanks to the neighbors, all they saw was a fire and a smell of burning flesh. To this day, the shadow man with white eyes still takes lives if they go near its trailer park. This is story number 2. It is by Shadow Watching. The title is "Please Help Me. Something has been calling to me, and I know it has my voice." It is currently 4:13 p.m., January 28th, 2024. I'm going to get this all down here, and in case this is the last time that I'm here to reach out, I hope that I put this in the right place. My name is Maggie Williams. I am 24 years old. I just moved into my new house 3 weeks ago. And if I could take everything back, I would. I am currently a student teaching in a kindergarten class in the local school district, and I thought everything was perfect. That was until about a week ago. I live alone. It is not a big house, far enough out of town to get that country feel, but close enough that commute to work is less than half an hour. Typing this now, I'm in the closet in the only bedroom of the house. Not even the locked door or the hanging coats that are blocking the door are enough to make me feel safe at this point. My father thinks I am too far from home, and the high elevation is just sending me into a state of madness. At this point, I need someone to believe me. This is not altitude sickness. This is not homesickness. This is not a descent into madness. I am in danger. It is here. Enough about me. There should be enough there that someone will know where to find me if I do not make it out of here. About a week ago, I heard a voice calling to me, late at night. It sounded like it was coming from the backyard. I turned the light on, but I could not see anything, and the tree line was too dark to see any past that. I think looking was my first mistake. A few days later, my doorbell started. Every 30 minutes, it would ring twice. All night long, starting around 11 p.m. until 4 a.m. Every 33 minutes. Exactly 4 weeks. I took the batteries out of the sensor. It still happened. I took the sensor off the wall completely and threw it away. I watched them take it when they took the trash, and it kept happening. I took a hammer and smashed the doorbell that was hanging by the door. There is only a mere slightly discolored spot and some dents in the house at that point, and yet it keeps ringing. After the doorbell, it was the reflections. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see it. Tall, dark, twisted face. No clothes, but seeming to have no body parts at that time. It started in the mirrors. I covered them, but still feel it there. Watching. Always watching through the sheets. I smashed the mirrors. They now sit broken, but still tightly wrapped with dark sheets. After that, anything that can cast reflection in the house is now covered. With no reflections, I can still feel the featureless face on me. Last week, I let it in. I did not mean to. I was at the end. The door bell seeming to echo as if it was coming from my brain. I was in my closet like I am now, but I could not take it anymore. I stood and ran to the front door, swung the door open, and screamed, "Leave me alone!" I just wanted whatever it was to leave me alone. Now it calls to me, but it is me, my voice, but not quite right. My reflection, but not quite right. My footsteps, dragging footsteps up and down the hall all night long as the bell rings, as the voice calls, as it tries to call me from my place. It can't seem to find me. Not yet. Moves in the shadows. It is the shadows. It is the very air around me, and it will not stop until it finds me. I can hear it now. Leave me alone. 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 Its chant seems to be coming from the hall and inside my head at the same time. My name is Maggie Williams. I'm 24 years old. I'm a student teacher to 22 amazing kindergarten students. I'm not going crazy. This is happening. That is not me. I need help. If anyone sees this, I need help. If anyone sees this and it's too late, please find my mother and father, Mary and Kenneth Williams, and let them know what really happened to me. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have not have opened the door. I like those two stories. Really creepy. Both of them. One was kind of gory and one was kind of like, ooh, like mysterious, bringing you along with her. But I hope y'all enjoyed those and y'all have a good week and a good rest of your weekend. I love y'all so much. I will see y'all on Tuesday for more paranormal. But until then, remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe. Howdy y'all, it's Curious Raven on this creepypasta Saturday. Sorry I did not put a video out yesterday. I just needed a little extra day to rest. This story is written by Horror Writer 1717. The title of it is I Was Sent to a Small Town Where Strange Things Were Happening. Even thinking about retelling this story has made me the most afraid I have ever been in my life. I suppose if I kept it bottled up, I would go insane. God knows the security company isn't talking. I feel like if I don't warn people and they go there. If I'm telling the story, then I better back it up a bit. It started a little over a month ago. I work for a security firm that guards projects all over the country. I'm sort of a specialist. It seems like if there's some weird stuff happening at site, I get called in. I'm not sure why. Maybe my ex-military background, or maybe the fact that, well, we'll get to that. This place up in New England was having some trouble. A local firm was remodeling an old church when workers suddenly started quitting. No one seemed to have a good reason why they didn't want to work there anymore. So guess who got the call to come in and straighten things out? Arriving up there gave me the most profound feeling of being alone I've ever had. And mind you, I have sat watch in caves, foxholes, ditches, and some of the most godforsaken places on the planet, all by my lonesome, and never did I ever feel as soul-crushingly alone as I drove up that little 2-lane road that was the only sign of humanity as the streets seemed close in on me from every side. As unnerving as that was, it was nothing compared to pulling into a small town the church was. It was like the nightmare scene from a B horror movie. Guess arriving right in the middle of a rainstorm didn't help. I pulled in beside the only vehicle I saw and ran inside the hotel that looked like a saloon out of an old western. I barely got the door closed until there was a light and a gun shoved in my face. Who the hell are you? said a man from somewhere behind the glare of a flashlight. Jones, I said, slowly raising my hands. I was called in to help out with your worker problem. The light lowered, but the gun stayed. What company do you work for? Sentinel Security. I saw the man relax a little, but mostly was happy that he lowered his gun. In best of times, a gun in a situation is less than ideal. All kinds of accidents can happen. I've seen many innocent bystanders fall victim to contagious gunfire. The man stepped over to a table and sat. As I looked around the room, I was surprised at how much it looked like a movie set from an old western, right down to the lit lanterns on the table and hanging from the rafters. He beckoned me over and I sat across from him. Judging by the welcome, I'm guessing the workers aren't the only ones who's spooked, I said. He looked at the gun, then laid it on the table. He seemed to be in his 40s or 50s, but there was a tiresome in his eyes. He looked weary and haggard. Truth be told, I'm not even sure a gun would do any good. Maybe you should tell me when the trouble started. He looked at me, and I could see worry tugging at his eyes. Your contract's open, right? I nodded. Which means you have to finish the job or you don't get paid, right? I nodded again. He looked me over for a long while, then sat back, drained his glass of amber-colored liquid, and sighed. I bought this town a while back, he started. Recently, with passing my wife, I decided I needed to throw myself into a project to keep me busy. I wanted to revitalize this town and turn it into a tourist attraction. I'm sorry for your loss. He nodded in recognition, but never said another word about her. Things were going here smoothly, he said. The buildings you see have all been restored. They look good. You should have seen them when we started, he scoffed. They were falling apart. No one had lived here for years. That's why I was able to buy the whole place for next to nothing. I'm thinking that's not the only reason. Yes, he said, as a haunted look passed through his eyes. We saved the church for last because it needed the most work. But once they started remodeling is when things began to happen. Things? It wasn't much at first. Shovels and saws would go missing. Tools would be left in fine order at night only to be complete disarray in the morning. For a while the workers blamed each other, saying there was a prankster amongst them. But that wasn't the case. Oh, how I wish it was. I waited for a long time for him to continue. We found the first body shortly after that, he said quietly. I barely heard him. Of a worker? He nodded. Dead? He nodded again. Why didn't you stop everything and leave? Because it was already too late, he said. We had disturbed it. Disturbed what? He opened his mouth as to speak, but no words came out. He shook his head and looked away. For a moment I could swear I saw a tear run down his cheek. I'm sorry, he said, rubbing his palms on his face. Let me take you to your room and we'll discuss this further in the morning. My curiosity wanted him to finish the story, but it seemed like his weariness had been amplified by alcohol. I followed him as he carried the lantern up the stairs to the first door and opened it for me. He handed me the light and told me the bathroom was across the hall if I needed it. I'll be here bright and early in the morning to give you the dollar tour, he said, sounding more like a host. Aren't you staying here tonight? His eyes flashed genuine fear. Not here, he said. I'll be back in the morning. I looked around the comfortable-looking room, trying to decide what was so wrong with it, and as he stepped to the door. Oh, by the way, he said, stopping at the doorway, don't bother with your cell phone. There's no signal up here. I glanced down at my phone, and when I looked up, he was gone. I picked up the lantern and stepped to the doorway, but I didn't hear him leaving. You would have thought someone walking out on a hardwood floor would make some noise, but it was silent. The only noise I heard was the rain pelting against the windows. Since I was already in the hallway, I decided to check out the bathroom. I walked a short distance from the hall and found it to be functional and clean, but nothing extraordinary. While I was there, I used the toilet and washed my hands, then went to the room and got my toiletries kit to brush my teeth. Carrying a lantern around was a little disconcerting. I've had to deal without electricity many times before, but that wasn't what was bothering me. The shadows from the lamp danced all over, giving the impression of others in the room with me. It's strange because I'd never had that feeling before. Shadows were always just shadows. I was trained to be cautious of who would be hiding in the shadows, not the shadows themselves. I finished up my bedtime routine and settled into sleep. There wasn't much of anything else to do, so might as well get some rest. One of the things I was taught early on in my career was, anytime you get a chance, rest. You never know when the next chance will come. I laid down on a comfortable bed and did some relaxation exercises. Before I knew it, I was asleep. I woke with a start, not knowing why. It was pitch black in the room. Instead of panicking, I touched my watch to illuminate it and found my phone. Turning on the flashlight and lighting the lamp helped me to get my bearings, but still didn't tell me why I was awake. I sat there for a long moment, then I heard it. There was a loud clanking sound coming from somewhere outside. Sleeping in my clothes when on the job was a habit. I'd gotten into them when I first started doing private security, another carryover from the military. I slipped out of my bed and into my boots and then strapped on my utility belt and checked to make sure my sidearm was loaded. I turned off the phone's flashlight and grabbed a small utility flashlight from one of the pouches on the belt. For the moment, I holstered the gun and explored with the flashlight. This could be nothing. I didn't want to go into gangbusters just to find some kids playing around or a worker came in early. I double-checked my watch. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. Seemed like an odd time for a worker to come in. Stranger things have happened. Working my way down the stairs quietly, I double-checked the bathroom. It was empty. Opening the door, I had the strangest feeling that something was wrong. Nothing seemed to be out of place. It had stopped raining, and I stepped out into the street to find a light layer of fog. Looking up and down the street, I heard the noise again. It sounded like it was coming from the direction of the church. Leading with the flashlight, I started in that direction. There seemed to be a slight orange glow coming from inside the building closer I got. The beam of my flashlight made the air around me glow. It made me feel like I was giving my position away. I fought back the feeling. This was a little town in Vermont, not an active war zone. I had to be cautious, but also temper it with non-lethal actions. The church loomed in front of me. It seemed much larger up close. I climbed the steps and reached for the doorknob when a loud crack sounded behind me. I whipped around, shining my flashlight at everything, but there was nothing there. As I was looking back, I noticed a light in the window of my room. I must have left the lantern lit. As I looked, I saw the light dim from a distance and then get much brighter, almost as if someone had walked in front of it. Temperature felt like it was in the lower 70s. That didn't keep a chill from running down my spine. Someone was curious to know who I was. From experience, I found that it's never good if someone wants to find out who you are, but doesn't want to do it face to face. That would be something to deal with when I get back to my room. For now, there was a church to explore. I got the feeling that someone was trying to distract me from entering the church. I reached the top of the stairs and turned the knob, but nothing happened. It didn't feel like it was locked. It was almost as if someone was on the other side holding the knob. I turned as hard as I could, and finally it gave and the door opened, dragging me inside and nearly knocking me to the floor. Regaining my balance, my hand over my gun, expecting to see someone doing something they weren't supposed to. As I slowly panned around the room, I found something much worse. Absolutely nothing. There was a lit lantern set up on a table near the altar that was in the middle of being restored. Other than that, there were a lot of pews that were halfway constructed. The ones that were finished looked like they had been sanded or waiting for a layer stain. I walked down the center aisle as I looked up, as if looking for a seat at a wedding or funeral. As I approached the partially constructed pulpit, I looked up and saw a life-sized wooden carving of Jesus across the room. It looked old, Not like wine that ages well, but like decrepit. It had been painted flesh colors at one time, but now it was cracked and peeling from the carving. It looked grotesque to see layers of skin peeling away. It was rotting off his body. I'm not the most religious man, but I believe in Jesus. I prayed enough prayers sitting in foxholes and caves and asked to be rescued from bad situations, and I'm still here. I wouldn't call him and I best buds. I know our relationship could be closer, but seeing him that way rotting to pieces was just disturbing. As I looked into his face, I swore I saw his eyes open for an instant. I blinked my own eyes to be sure I was seeing right. But when I looked again, they were closed. It was my imagination playing tricks on me. At least that's what I told myself as I stepped onto the platform and looked around. Off to each side were doors. I went to the one to the right and found a small broom closet. The one on the left held a set of stairs that went down and disappeared into darkness. Just inside the door, there was a yellow-black caution tape blocking the way down. I shone the light on the stairs, and it looked sturdy enough. I reached for the tape, but before I got hold of it, a strong hand grabbed my shoulder and turned me around. "What do you think you're doing?" said a man who was a full foot shorter than me. His grip felt like iron. "I was about to go down these stairs," I said. He looked at me, incredulous look a parent gave a toddler who was reaching for a hot stove. "And you didn't see the caution tape?" he said. "I saw it. Who are you anyway? I've never seen you here before." "Jones," I said, offering my hand. "I'm with Sentinel Security. I was called to investigate why workers keep quitting." He looked at my hand and then at me. "So this investigation includes ignoring obvious warnings?" My hand was still extended, but had yet to be shaken. I let it fall back to my side. "Are you a worker or foreman?" He scoffed. "Nothing so formal. I make sure people do what needs to be done." "So, foreman." His eyes bled suspicion as he stared at me. "Where did you say you're from again?" As I was about to answer, more workers entered, followed by the owner I had met last night. "Let's ask the boss if he knows you," the foreman said smugly. The owners locked with me and gave me the strangest look as he walked up to us. "Good morning," he said, addressing both of us. "Good morning, sir," the foreman said. "I caught this man snooping around here. Did you know?" he said. "Is that true?" "I wasn't snooping, I was investigating," I said. "Don't you remember our conversation last night?" His eyes opened a hair wider for an instant and went back to normal. "Of course I do," he said with a smile that seemed forced. "Remind me again, my memory isn't the best." "We met in the saloon, talked for a little bit, and then you showed me to my room." "Indeed," he said with a raised eyebrow. "Did I say anything else?" "You told me you bought this place after your wife passed away, when problems started after you found the first dead worker." "Dead?" Foreman said with alarm. "When did this happen?" Owner burst into laughter. "It appears Mr. Jones here has pulled a fast one on you," he said to the foreman. "Perhaps he and I should go and discuss this matter in private, and you can continue with your work." The owner grabbed my arm and guided me away from the foreman, whose eyes burned as they followed us out the door. We walked out of the church in silence. As he nodded to the workers who were straggling in to start work for the day, he led me back to the saloon and we sat at the same table as before. "So you and I met in the saloon last night," he said. "At this very table," I said. "We came to the door and you pulled a gun on me." His eyebrows raised. "Did I now? And what time was this?" "I'd say around 9. We sat here and talked a bit about what was going on with the workers." "And what else did I say, other than about the worker?" "I asked why you hadn't left and you said it was too late." This time, he didn't try to hide it. His eyes grew wide, he stared at me for a long moment, then seemed to gather himself. "I apologize, Mr. Jones, if this has all seemed a little strange," he said. "You and I did not have a conversation last night." It was my turn to raise my eyebrows. "At 9 o'clock last night, I was in bed with my very much alive wife." But you said, and we have not had any workers die. I don't understand. Neither do I. I've thought about it for a long time. You were drinking when you talked to me. Is it possible you were drunk to remember? He leaned a little closer. I haven't had a drink in 19 years. He reached in his pocket and set a coin on the table. I picked it up and looked at it. It was an AA coin. Then who did I talk to last night? He put the coin back in his pocket. Are you sure it was me who was drinking? I looked up at him and read suspicion in his eyes. I don't drink. He leaned back in his chair. It seems we've reached an impasse, he said. Perhaps I should call your company and have a different person come and investigate the matter. I wanted to find out what was going on. Perhaps you should give me at least a day to investigate, I said. Unless there's some other reason you don't want me to get to the bottom of this. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Please continue your investigation, Mr. Jones, he said, unimpeded. I will inform the foreman to allow you free rein. Thank you, I said, standing to leave. Just one more thing, he said. What was the last part of what my doppelganger told you? You said it was too late to leave because you had disturbed something. His eyes fell to the table as if in deep thought. I went back to the church and began talking to the workers one by one. Each of them was hesitant to talk around the foreman, but once they were out of earshot, they told me very similar stories. There had been strange things going on, especially at night. It was more than just tools being moved around. Strange symbols would appear carved into the wood they were using. The owner would tell them to cut the symbols out and use whatever they could of the wood. One of the workers had gone missing, but after a day or so, the owner said he had quit. The strange thing was no one was able to contact him after that. The more I dug, the more I found. Some of the workers had become curious as to why they were restoring this town in the middle of nowhere. It turned out it had been a long suspected that satanic rituals were carried out in this very church. It also was suspected to be the site of one of the earliest witch burnings. But the two facts that stuck out in my mind, no one hung around after dark. That was when things were alleged to get strange, and no one was allowed down the steps I had found before the foreman stopped me. The workers had been told the steps were unsafe and could collapse under the weight of a person. It didn't take much convincing them away from the creepy stairs. By the afternoon, I knew exactly what my next move was. I went back to my room and checked around to see if anything was missing. Nothing seemed to be, so I set my watch and took a nap. The alarm went off at 9 o'clock. I went to the bathroom to splash some water on my face and then geared up for an expedition. When I got to the church, it was empty. I made a beeline for the left door and the creepy staircase, with flashlights attached to a headband and on my waistband. I was good to go to keep my hands free for whatever I might need them for. I attached a safety rope like mountain climbers do and found a sturdy spot to anchor it into the wall. If the stairs gave out on me, I at least wouldn't fall. As advertised, every stair creaked like it was about to give out, but thankfully none of them did. The trip down was an assault on the senses. The damp, musty smell of rotting wood and general decay was nearly overwhelming. I was surprised at the general lack of cobwebs. It told me this area wasn't quite as off-limits as some had let on. Surprisingly, the bottom didn't open up into a full basement. There were a few wooden shelves at the base of the door, but they were empty. Instead, it became a narrow passageway. The floor is made of dirt, and the walls were the same stone the foundation of the church was made from. It seemed whoever had built in this tunnel built it at the same time as the church. The ceiling barely made it to 6 feet. I had to duck to keep from brushing my head against it. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. This was the key to discovering what was happening here. I've been walking for 10 minutes. Senses alert, hand on my holster sidearm. Suddenly, the air changed. The smell became more pungent and the air warmer. There was a feeling of closing in that made the hairs on my arm stand up. I turned a corner. The tunnel opened up into a large room with a high ceiling. I panned around, trying to get the scope of the room, when my light fell on something big in the corner. It looked like a massive black boulder that was made of leather. Watching transfixed, I noticed it was moving. Not much, but just a bit, rising and falling. I realized it was breathing. Fear gripped me. No longer had any interest in finding out what was going on here. I just wanted to turn away and slowly back away. The thing made a noise. It was either a snore or a cough, but in either case, it seemed to be waking up. I doused my lights and stayed as still as possible while listening to the total darkness. Its breathing became louder and less steady. I heard a creaking, sounded like the bones when someone scratched. It was getting up, and I was standing in the middle of the tunnel. If by some miracle it didn't already know I was there, as soon as it walked over here, it would run right into me. My mind raced to come up with options as I heard footsteps coming closer. I backed up against the wall and started edging to the left, hoping I was in the main room and not still in the tunnel. The footsteps were so close, then they suddenly stopped. The absence of the sound was deafening. I tried to hold my breath and then listened for the beast's breathing. It was slow and sporadic, as if it was listening for me. Neither of us moved. We barely breathed, each waiting for the other to reveal their location. My hand drifted to the gun as I pulled it out of the holster as quietly as possible. Air shifted. The beast had moved, but I didn't know where. I heard a strange belching sound. "What are you doing, Mr. Jones?" I tried to hold off as long as I could, but curiosity got the best of me. I turned my headlamp to find the owner standing right in front of me, staring at me with a maddening smile. My eyes darted around looking for the beast, but I knew I wouldn't find it. It was standing in front of me. "So, are you the real thing?" I said, hoping to keep the panic out of my voice. "Or are you some shapeshifter who pretends to be someone else because he has no identity of his own?" "I am whomever I want to be," he said. I heard this belching again, only this time I had a displeasure of watching it happen. His entire body rippled and tore itself apart, only to reform itself into the beast for a moment, and then tear apart again and reform into something much more terrifying. I gasped, looking into my own eyes. "You see," he said in my voice, "I can take your place and travel around pretending to solve problems." While he was changing, I glanced around to see if there was anything else in the room I could use. In the far corner, I saw what looked like a nest, an inverted cross hanging on the wall. "If you could, why haven't you?" I said, playing a hunch. "What?" "If you were free to go anywhere, then why haven't you? Why sit here in the middle of the woods with nothing to do?" "I chose to stay here," he said in my voice. "You chose because this is where your power is? You know so little. I'm rebuilding this place so my worshippers can live here and pray to me, giving me all the power I need, just like when this place was first built. And until my followers thrive, I survive off of human sacrifice. So you did kill the worker, and no one remembers him, just like they won't remember you." I grinned and took a step forward, but I drew my pistol and shot him in the forehead. He fell to the ground, bleeding. It was a strange sight to watch myself die, but then the squelching began, and again, and he reformed into his demonic form. He stood 10 feet tall and covered in leathery skin that looked like tiny teeth. His face was a nightmare of glowing red eyes and massive sharp teeth. He roared at me in what sounded like 1,000 voices. I turned and ran down the tunnel, ducking so I didn't hit my head and knock myself out. That would have ended my escape and my life. I heard the squelching again, and I heard my voice call after me. "You can't escape. And besides, I know how to find you." I turned and fired, hitting me in the chest. He dropped and squelched again. I wanted him to watch turn into his demon form, to see squished into the tunnel. That was too small for him, but I didn't dare squander this time for anything but escape. It seemed like forever until I came to the stairs. I took them 2 at a time. Once I reached the top, I turned to see him at the bottom. I shot him again, then found a lantern inside the church, lit it, and tossed it downstairs. The glass shattered, spreading the fire all over the bottom. It began to burn almost immediately. I could hear his desperate cries. Flames crawled up the stairs, destroying them one by one. Turning and running out the door, I didn't bother with my things in the room. I hopped in the car and drove like a bat out of hell. My hand shook on the steering wheel as I glanced in my rearview mirror, hoping I wouldn't see that thing chasing me. I saw a glow glowing in the forest behind me. I prayed the whole church was on fire and it would spread all the houses. I only wished his followers were in the houses when they burned. I wondered how many more places there were like this in the world. Howdy y'all, it's Curious Raven. On this fine Tuesday, I am going to read some haunted house stories today. Number 1. This happened 2 years ago in my old house. The thing is, I need to wake up every night to go to the bathroom. And every day I see this chair in the living room, sitting in front of the TV in the exact same position. Never gave it much attention before, but one day I woke up and I felt like I saw someone sitting there. I turned the lights on and no one was there. I thought I was just seeing things as I was sleepy and forgot about it. But now that we are moving, I saw the same thing again and repeatedly so much that I stopped going to drink some water after going to the bathroom. This is something I usually do not know what it was, but it's winter and a new area we moved to is extremely foggy. You wake up at 6 and go outside and you won't see anything. It's outside the city, and I'm a bit scared. So what should I do? And for context, I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in demons. Number 2. I need someone to comment. On Wednesday the 17th, I woke up to blood coming from my toilet directly into my room. It was dripping into my room. It was not my family's blood and my animals were in the kitchen. Animals consist of 3 dogs and 1 cat. Then on Thursday of the 18th, my parents heard footsteps in our kitchen. It was not my footsteps or my sister's footsteps. Then on Friday the 19th, I was on my phone at exactly 12. My Alexa started buffering. I listened to rain sounds as I sleep, like an old TV that was not connected to anything. I am really scared. I am baptized and I pray every night. I need help. Thanks. Number 3. Spooky ass shadow people exist. I don't have a pic or anything, but I wouldn't make this story up, as it's not so scary and is more mysterious. And I felt like the ghost wasn't bad if it were a ghost. So I was laying in bed when I had the urge to sit up and get some nicotine. In my old bedroom, like 5 or 6 years ago, I had sleep paralysis. Although I stayed in bed to hit my cig or whatever, I heard footsteps and stared at my doorway for a good 10 minutes, then brushing it off. Was it just being sleepy? But I was kind of just sitting there, debating on getting up in the middle of the night for water, when a fucking shadow man with a classy hat and a briefcase run up to my door, sit there and stare for about 30 seconds. I was in shock or awe, not wanting to spook it away or something. I just didn't move. And I eventually wanted to get up to see if I was seeing was real. But as I did, it turned around and walked away slowly, like it was trying to lead me somewhere. I couldn't sleep and stayed up all night. And this was when I was around 16 to 15 years old. Number 4. This is a bit bare bones compared to some of the stories on here. Last week, my wife and I were folding a mountain of laundry. As we were quietly folding, we both hear my son whistle. We don't think of it for a moment until I realize he is at his bio dad's this week. We both came to the realization that we heard our son's whistle while only myself and wife and 6-month napping daughter were at home. We look into his room where we heard it and nothing. We get back to folding and we both feel an eerie, I'm being watched feeling. My wife burns sage and does the get out thing. That evening, we hear the doorbell ring, but no one was there. That's all I've experienced with this, but my wife seems to be a magnet for these things. As of late, she's been hearing me when I'm not home. The baby, when she's in daycare, she felt so vindicated that we both heard it. Number 5. When I was younger, I used to sleep with the TV on, to me being scared of the dark, but one day, I decided to sleep without the TV on because I was trying to get used to being able to sleep in the dark. So I was asleep, but then I woke up to the sound of clicking noises in my room. It sounded like somebody clicking a pen over and over again. It was going on for a long time. For some reason, I couldn't move my body, but I was awake. It was like I was experiencing sleep paralysis, but I know I woke up that night because of the sound. But anyways, I couldn't move. For some reason, I got to move, and every time I moved, the clicking noise stopped. But it was every time I moved. When I moved or when I would take a deep breath, the sound kept getting closer and closer. But if it was somebody or something, I wouldn't been able to see since it was close or it was getting closer and closer. Then it stopped. Then it continued again till it got like so close to my ear to where I would think somebody was next to me. But I wouldn't have felt somebody on my bed or just in general. You can feel someone is next to you. Nothing. It was just the sound. But I slept the next day. Nothing was there. No sight of a pen. Nothing. Or maybe I'm dumb and I'm just hearing stuff. Number 6. I'm not sure what to call this experience, so I've always just called it an echo. I used to live in a house that was built by my stepdad in the 70s. I moved in '03 to keep my mom company after he passed away unexpectedly. It was a good time for me as I was just separating from my husband. I had a 1 to 2-year-old with me. I used to hear these baby cries in the night and panic and go rush in his room to find him sound asleep. The cries sounded bad, like a baby had been crying and crying for a long time. This would happen over and over for a year or so, and it eventually stopped. My mom could never hear it. Then years later, I remarried and we got pregnant. Quick. And my mom offered for us to stay living there. After my second child was born, I started to hear these phantom baby cries again. But this time, my husband started to hear them too. We would hear the cries echoing through the house, think, oh my God, that sounds bad, and rush in there, only to find our baby sleeping. One time, my mom was telling me stories from my stepdad. In the 80s, he's lived with his wife and 2 daughters. Apparently, the second daughter cried a lot as a baby, and they never knew what to do and would just leave her in the crib to cry for long periods of time. Now, this isn't a ghost story, because I've met his daughters. They're alive and well in Florida. Has anyone ever had experience like this? Number 7. I lived in a pretty big family home for 26 years. The house itself is about 34 years old. My parents built it. We were the only owners until we sold it. My grandma passed away when I was 7, and I think she often would visit us in the house. I can tell because she smoked, and we would smell cigs every now and then again. No one else in my family smoked, our friends don't smoke, and it wasn't all the time. Then I'd be sleeping and feel someone poking, then I'd be sleeping and feel someone poking my head. I initially chalked it up to my covers touching me, etc., but it happened even if I wasn't covered. I also felt like someone was resting their hands on mine. I had my own room at the time, so no other sibling was in there. I could often feel someone standing by my bed or by the door closet. It didn't always feel eerie, and it wasn't every day, but still, then. One night, I dropped my sister off at her friend's. She said she would call when she was ready to be picked up. I sat in my room alone, just playing on my computer, when a huge bang knock came crashing onto my bedroom door. It wasn't the floor settling, anyone downstairs, etc. I opened the door and no one was there. I was so scared. I drove to the store until my sister came home. Some things to note. Rubber bands would also randomly appear, another sign of my grandma. The neighborhood was not far from the ancient Native American burial ground. This all very well could also just be sleep paralysis and nothing at all. However, I will say I've always felt very connected. For example, before my grandmother passed, we were in her apartment getting her ready to go to the hospital. And when I looked out the window and saw a bunch of motorcycles and cars, no connection to those, they are vivid in my mind. I thought to myself, she's going to heaven. I didn't know she was even sick. I also saw a black and white version of my mom emerge from her bathroom closet when I was on the toilet. My mom is alive and was in her bed at the same time when I was using her restroom. Then a random dream about my brother-in-law getting in trouble in a very certain way, and the next day, he did. Nothing criminal, just personal trouble. Any thoughts? I'm going to give y'all a bonus story today. Number 8. When I started dating my wife, I was 15. And her stepdad gave me this rock that had a dragon carved into it. It was cool, actually, and was heavy. I took it home and placed it in my room inside my entertainment center. As time went by, it became difficult to get a good night's sleep. I would wake up constantly and have trouble getting back to sleep during this time. I had increasingly suicidal thoughts. I started withdrawing myself from my family. One day, I was watching my small nephew when I was sitting outside on the phone, and I was peering through the window to keep an eye on my nephew who was sleeping on the couch, when all of a sudden, a small dark shadow, about 4 feet tall, went from room to room. I immediately got chills and was afraid to go back inside. Another time, I was sleeping in my room, and I woke up to the shadow standing over me. I couldn't move or say anything. The moment I started praying, it descended into my bed, and I was able to move again. I got up and ran out of the room and fell asleep on the couch. One day, I was watching a program about hauntings, and they had mentioned how a demon attached itself to a doll. That's when it clicked on me that everything started happening once I got the rock dragon from my girlfriend's stepdad. I opened my entertainment center, and it was gone. I looked everywhere for it and never found it. But since it disappeared, everything stopped. I was myself again and no more shadow people or night terrors. There is one other small note, and I am not sure if it's related or not, but during this time, I developed type 2 diabetes. I always wondered if that had anything to do with it. That was a creepy ending to this video today. I hope everybody's doing okay. How was your weekend? Mine was good, I must say. I slept a lot. I wasn't feeling that great. I was having a lot of issues with my hips to the point where it was really hard for me to walk. So that's why Saturday's video was skipped. I'm very sorry, y'all. I'm always so transparent with you guys, and I want to tell you why and the truth of why things are not coming out and what's going on in my life. I love y'all so much. I will see y'all this Thursday. But until then, remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe. Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven. Today is Tuesday, and we have some haunted, spooky places to talk about. I hope y'all enjoy these stories. Number 1. About a year ago, I had my first paranormal experience. It wasn't exactly the first time I felt something, but it was the first time it was visual and I could hear things. First, I'd like to give some context to this story. I'm 22 years old. My whole family has a somewhat connected history with the supernatural. I've heard various stories from both my grandmother and my mother, especially my mother, who told me stories about the dreams and how she would talk to deceased relatives or receive messages. Despite this family history, I was never very spiritual. Okay, I had a few moments where I felt things, but I concluded that it was just my fear taking over my mind and making me imagine things that don't exist. However, around June 2023, I had 2 experiences that changed my perspective on all of this. The first one, which may not mean anything and could be just in my head. After the second one, it made me think it might have been some kind of contact. I'm a university student and I study at night, often finishing quite late around 9:30 to 10 p.m. When I was coming back from class, going down the stairs as I usually do, listening to music, I heard a voice call my name twice. I took my headphones off immediately and thought it might be a classmate trying to tell me something I forgot or wanting to talk to me. At that moment, I went upstairs, and when I reached the floor where my class was, I didn't see anyone there. I thought it was just my imagination, so I continued on my way home. A few days later, I was heading home after class, had just gotten off the subway, and was on the station overpass when I saw a tall man in an overcoat pass by me. I tried talking to my cousin about these 2 events. He told me that our family has this spiritual side, suggesting that maybe I've reached the age where these things are surfacing in me. He told me he had similar experiences when he was my age. I don't know how much of this is true and how much is it just nonsense, especially the part about the family. My cousin is a bit of out there and uses a lot of weed and other drugs. He's not crazy, but he can get a bit carried away with what he says sometimes. What do you guys think? Was it some kind of real contact with paranormal or just in my head? Number 2. When I was about 14 years old, I had appendicitis, and I had to be rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery because they were on the edge of bursting. So the day after my surgery, I was watching an early morning talk show, and out of the corner of my right eye, I saw a figure standing at the full glass window of my room. And so I looked, and there was a man with the most gorgeous piercing blue eyes, black short hair, and wearing a black shirt and a priest collar. Yes, I know it sounds like something out of a fantasy Mild Sex Mills and Boom story, and all this person could do was smile at me, which began to creep me out. So discreetly searched for the call button, which is on my left side, so the person couldn't see me press it. But after pressing the button, and I looked away, for a split second, the man had disappeared. The nurse came in not very soon after. I told her about the man, and the groundsman happened to be outside cleaning up, and he didn't see anyone fitting the description. And the groundsman was outside for hours. So who was this person? Number 3. I just had my first encounter with something. I don't want to call it a shadow figure. I really don't know what it was. All I can say is that I could feel a presence behind me. The same way you can feel when someone is approaching you from behind, and a small black figure in my peripheral. While I do believe in paranormal, I've never had anything happen in my presence, so I don't know what to make of it. I was really freaked out by it because it felt more like an omen than anything. I see stuff in my peripheral all the time, and so I usually dismiss stuff like this. Except my coworker who I was talking to when it happened had also seen it. We were standing there having a conversation when I saw a figure in black pop up over my right shoulder. I didn't think anything of it, just thought another coworker was trying to squeeze behind me to get by. I could feel their presence go from one side of me towards the other, exactly like someone trying to get by. So, I leaned forward a bit and then looked over my shoulder to see who it was, but no one was there. Thinking somebody was playing a prank on me, I quickly turned to look back the other way. Not a single person had tried to walk by. I looked back at the coworker I was talking to, and without me saying a word, he said, "I saw it too." He wasn't freaked out like I was, though. I started to explain what I saw to make sure we really saw the same thing, and he said, almost like someone wearing a black hoodie. And that's exactly what it was like. It didn't feel malevolent or threatening, just a presence. Again, I've never experienced anything like it, and this had actually happened not even an hour into the new year. I work night shift, so we were working during the flip into the new year, which led me to think it was an omen. Later that night, after I got home from work, a large chunk of my problem tooth broke off. I have a tooth, I need to get pulled, a molar that never cut, so it ended up growing in wrong. Now I can't imagine I had this massive, to me, experience of a possible omen happened, just to tell me that my tooth is about to chip. I don't know. Knock on wood, but nothing has happened since, good or bad. Number 4. I was maybe 10 or 11. My dad ran a bar in a country club, and from day one, I never liked being there, especially at night. I would always bring my Xbox to keep myself occupied. And the way the bar worked was you had the main area where the bar was, and through a little hallway was the bathrooms, and it led to another room that my dad put arcade games in. It wasn't used very often, but I think it's because nobody really knew about it. Through another door was a little room where I would play my Xbox, and then behind that room was my dad's office. Outside, where the employees usually parked, there was a small loading dock and a gate that led to a bunch of old pools that were shut down a long time ago, even then. And one day I saw what I thought was a person when I first saw it. It was wearing a black hood and moved very quickly away from me inside the defunct pool area. But when I really looked at it, I saw that it didn't have legs, or what legs are supposed to look like. They looked like a blur of legs, and I saw it dip around a corner. So, being the curious kid I was, I went looking around to see if I could see who or what it was and never saw it again. Another time, I was just wandering around after getting bored playing games, and I heard a piano playing in the ballroom that was just outside the bar and pro shop. So I went to look and no one was there. But there were imprints in the stool like someone was sitting there. And I've had multiple dreams, even spanning into my adulthood life, about being in there while the piano is playing. Nobody's there, but the piano is still playing. One night, when I had the dream again, I was grown and I walked into the ballroom and heard the piano yet again. But I saw a small kid standing with his back turned on the stage. Then everything went black. I've also had multiple times where the back rooms, I would hear voices and doors opening, but no one would be there. There were a couple of rooms that were just off the kitchen, and I had only been in there once. The power was shut off in those rooms because they weren't used, as they were like locker rooms for the pools. I walked in one night because I thought I heard someone in there. I get in maybe 3 steps and hear a very loud crash, and I turned and ran the other way. The thing I'll tell you about is one night when my dad had to close up, I was sitting in the lobby just off the ballroom, and I saw someone disappearing in front of me. I saw his upper half just fading away like Marty McFly in Back to the Future, and I was so scared by it. I ran to my dad crying. For the life of me, I couldn't tell him what was wrong because I was just that inconsolable. The place never sat right with me, and I learned later that one of my friends snuck in there while it was closed years later and saw the exact same apparition I saw the first time was running. She also heard the piano playing in the ballroom and saw what looked like blood stains in one of those rooms just off the kitchen. From what I was told, there was a guy that took his daughter hostage because his wife was filing a divorce, and he killed her, then himself, and apparently there was other deaths, but I don't know anything about them. Number 5, my experience wasn't as intense as some other ones on here, but it's been a fun story to tell whenever I've gotten the chance. In the summer of 2022, I decided to take summer classes at my university during the season so that I could complete some of the course credits early. I took U.S. History 1 as one of these classes. During this class, one of the projects that my professor assigned to me was to go to any historical site in Tennessee, where my uni is, and write a report about it and its historical significance. Coincidentally, I saw online that there was a previous fortress from the Civil War that was renovated into a local park around 15 minutes away from my university. This was perfect for me because it meant I could just go after class ended and get the project started early. So I went. At this park, everything was normal. It had normal things like a playground and some walking trails, and around the trails were some informational signposts about the war and how the fortress was utilized during the time. In the back of my mind, I was consciously aware of the fact that there were likely spirits around from that time. I didn't close myself off to this. I tried not to feel fearful of this feeling. In fact, I felt like I opened myself up to anything I could have experienced. Anyways, I walked around, took a few pictures, and didn't feel anything strange. So I gathered all the information I needed and went home after. I think it was either that night or the night after this day that I first experienced something strange. As I was trying to go to sleep, I felt like I heard a name pop into my head. It wasn't a normal name to me either, because it sounded very old-timey and bluntly white. I'm not white, so I don't have family members who would use this name. I actually didn't pay attention to this and just went to sleep without researching it because I don't even know. I just didn't care enough to look into it because I thought it was strange enough that I thought of this random name. Anyways, I woke up the next morning and remembered this weird sounding name. So I Googled it out of curiosity. It turns out that this name that I heard, Clark Corbin, belonged to Henry Clark Corbin, who was a general at the Battle of Nashville, 1864, in Tennessee from the Union side against the Confederacy. I mentioned earlier that at the park there were informed signposts of the Civil War, but I never saw his name on any of them. There were other names on them, but not his. When I rechecked if I just saw his name in passing, and that's how I thought of him, there was no info about him anywhere, which is why I think this was the spirit who contacted me. Whether it was a General Corbin himself or a private underneath him that was looking for him, I don't know. But regardless, it was really cool and a bit spooky. The experience that added a lot of fun for me to my U.S. history class and project. I even told my professor about what happened, and she seemed fascinated by it, wishing she could experience something like that herself. I don't blame her because I'm a history nerd too, but I'm lucky that this was a positive experience, nothing too frightening, like some of my friends and family have experienced. I think that Mr. Corbin just wanted to be remembered, and he definitely gave me something to remember from my life. Number 6. I think I've seen a shadow thing person twice in my life, and I'm not entirely sure on what it was, and I'm still skeptical on the paranormal. So, I'm a pretty big skeptic on all things paranormal. I don't really believe in the supernatural, especially with all the countless faked videos. Nuke Top 5 definitely comes to mind, but I will admit twice in my life, I have encountered something that I genuinely cannot explain away. These stories take place in upstate New York and Boston Spa. So, the first story, I was around 5, I'd say. 4 or 5, or most at 6. This year was somewhere around 2010, and I used to live in an apartment. And one night, I was taking a bath by myself upstairs, while my mother and my sister were downstairs. After I finished my bath, I got out of the tub and put my towel on. I was standing in the bedroom and I was looking out in the hallway, and inside the hallway I could clearly and visibly see a shadow moving from the bathroom into my sister's room, where it seemingly walked up to my sister's door and then disappeared. The strange thing is what it looked like, because it was what I used to call the finger man. It looked like when you take your hand and pretend to make a walking motion with your pointer finger and middle finger pointed downward. I was so scared and confused by what I saw that I remember running down the stairs and asking my mom and sister if they were just upstairs. When they weren't, and they laughed at me after describing what I saw. Later in life, when I was in my house years after we moved from the apartment, around 2012 to 2013-ish, I was getting ready for school one day, and I was in my room. I remember I could very clearly see a very long shadow arm reaching in from the hallway and knock down one of my hats I had hanging on my wall. I know I wasn't dreaming or imagining things because I very clearly saw my hat lying on the floor. I then went down the hall to my parents' bedroom, where their door was shut, and after I knocked, my mom opened it. I asked her if she was in the hallway and knocked over my hat, and she was confused and said no. I just went back to my room, confused and a little scared. The weird thing is, later, around 8 months ago, my mother and grandmother were visiting me in North Carolina since I'm in the Marines and I was doing infantry training while I was on a 96 4-day weekend, and the topic of ghost came up since we were watching those shows, and I brought up that story again. My mother mentioned that in the original apartment we lived, and my sister supposedly also had encounters in her room and was just creeped out. And my grandmother added that when she stayed the night there, she stayed in my sister's room and felt the same thing. I can't exactly remember everything she was saying, but I think she may have mentioned hearing a growl and getting scratched too, but again, it's been 8 months. I don't remember everything they mentioned, but they did in fact claim weird things that happened in my sister's room, which is the same room the shadow figure that I saw stopped at and disappeared. I still don't know exactly what I encountered, but I haven't seen anything after that, and I'm still skeptical to the paranormal. I even went to the Saratoga Sanatorium, which is supposedly one of the most haunted places in Saratoga, New York, and nothing happened there. And I had been to 2 supposedly haunted places before and had nothing happen. Number 7. When I was in elementary school, our teachers took our class to a castle, Piavera Castle in northwest of Italy, if you want to look at it. And since we got there, I had this feeling that something was off. Our tour guide walked us through the castle, telling us the story of when it was built, etc., etc. We were going to the second floor. At some point, at the left of the stairs, there was a closed room. Just a rope so you actually see what was in there. My classmates weren't paying attention, just going up the stairs, but for some reason, I looked in that room and saw this woman dressed in black. She had shining eyes. They were white silver. She was just standing there with her hands on her belly. I was 8, maybe 9 years old, so I was pretty scared and decided to just turn my head and forget about it. When we had lunch, our tour guide brought us to the castle park. There, we were on the grass, and I was looking around. A bit in the distance, I saw her again. I asked my friend if she could see her too. She told me that no one was there, but as she was telling me, I was seeing her, just like I can see my hands right now. During the afternoon, the tour went a little on, but I couldn't see her anymore. Before going back to the bus, we used the bathroom. We were pretty tired, so there wasn't a lot of chit-chat and noise you'd expect from 8 to 9-year-olds. I was waiting for my turn, and all of a sudden I heard a loud scream and a crying sound. Not one of us was screaming, and it happened that I was the only one who heard that. After that experience, I had other experiences with hearing voices screaming my name with an evil tone, just saying hi to me, hearing footsteps while no one's home, even seeing someone when no one's home. I frequently have dreams about something that's about to happen. Those are 7 spooky, kind of like a public area, not haunted house, but you're somewhere else and you hear something. And I always like to kind of separate them because it's cool. But I hope y'all have a good rest of your week. I'll see you on Thursday. I love y'all so much. Remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe. Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven on this Thursday. I have some cryptid stories, sleep stories, kind of a mix. So hope y'all enjoy. Number 1. I'm a 19-year-old guy from Romania. I live in a remote village, 14 kilometers from a main road. My village is surrounded on one side by a big pine forest. Since I was a boy, I've always felt uneasy around that forest. I would only enter it with my father when we gathered wood. But a year ago, one of my cousins played a prank on me and tied my dog to a tree at the edge of the forest at dusk. When I saw my dog missing, I went and started searching for him. I started to hear his barks and whimpers at the edge of the forest. I rushed to him, cut him loose. As soon as I did, he ran and whimpered, absolutely terrified. As I was about to follow him back home, I get a feeling of being watched that runs down my spine. I try not to give into it as I turn around and walk back home normally. When my grandmother was alive, she always would tell me about Strigoi, a kind of half ghoul, half vampire, and about Bryasolisi, a sort of a dog man. I always laughed at her stories thinking about them, but just as folk tales to scare children. That night I left my window half open, but still locked because it was hot. And as I was beginning to drift to sleep, I hear this dry breathing outside my window. It sounded like an old smoker on their deathbed. As I heard this, a primal fear set inside me. I began sweating and I couldn't move for what felt like ages. After a minute, adrenaline kicked in, and I jumped out of my bed and closed the window. From that day forward, I never kept my window open at night. I still sometimes hear taps on my wall at night. Curious Raven here. I'm sorry if I pronounced those wrong. I tried my best. Number 2. So tonight I was standing on my porch and I hear this low, almost mechanical sounding hum. Almost like it could be a hum from a transformer box, a sound. It's always only last a couple of seconds, and only every now and then, and only at night. But I have heard the sound throughout my life. It's very familiar to me. No matter where I am, I have heard it multiple places since I was a child. I currently live out of the country, formerly the city. Even if I'm moving, when I hear it, it always sounds the same volume, like it's always the same distance away. I don't know what changed tonight, but something clicked in my mind that it's not a normal noise made by nature or anything else I can think of. I don't know what I used to think it was, maybe an animal, but I know that it can't be any animal that would be in every place I've heard it, and I've only heard it at night. My partner was also standing outside with me and heard it, and I asked if she had ever heard it before, and she said that she has always heard it as well, and she realized she's never realized what the sound was either. Has anyone else ever heard this? If anyone knows what this could be, I'd appreciate it. To my bet's a Wendigo or a Skinwalker. I'll try to get a recording of the sound next time I hear it. Number 3. Okay, so I've never believed in cryptids ever. My sister, 22 female, and I, 19 female, like to joke about a lot when we hang out outside at night, which is almost every night. Tonight we sat on the porch rather than our chairs by the woods because we wanted to admire the Christmas lights we just put up. Mind you, we live almost in the middle of nowhere surrounded by woods. We know what our neighbors' donkeys, cows, dogs, roosters, and any other animal normally sounds like. We've even had our fair share of run-ins with screaming foxes. That's why it was horrifying when tonight at 3:05 a.m. we heard a roar/scream from the woods, only like 50 to 100 feet away from us. Clear as day. Hardly any echo. We ran straight inside and locked the doors. No one around us or in our family were awake or young enough to think that it would be a fun prank. We don't know how we feel. We tried thinking of every animal around and none are known for making that noise. What do we do? What animal could that be? Number 4. It started around 2 weeks before Halloween. I live with my fiance, have a single cat Ryder. We've been living in this rented house for over 2 years now. A minimal paranormal activity. My fiance and I have had our fair share of spiritual run-ins with residual energies, but never in this house. Well, the first incident happened when I was just doing a few chores, picking up a few things here and there. I heard a very vivid "meow" from behind me in the room. Turn around and nothing's there. I go to see where Ryder is, and he is dead asleep. I just shrug it off. I just assumed it was my mind playing tricks on me. Second instance, about a week after that. Another meow. Sounded like it came from another room. Ryder was in the room with me, asleep. Okay, maybe it was a stray cat outside. I shrugged it off. Either the next day or the day after, I'm in my gaming room just playing on my PC when I feel what I thought to be a tip of Ryder's tail brush against my calf. There's nothing there. The booger is asleep like 3 feet away from me on his cat tower. At this point, I'm like, we have a freaking cat ghost. And I tell my fiance, well, they are always the one to irrationalize it first before jumping to, oh my god, ghosties. So they pretty much just shrug it off as air pressure change and a stray cat outside. Well, the following week, they heard it. Told me about it. I feel a bit relieved, because now I know it's not just me. Fast forward today, heard it again. Just a single meow. Fiance wants to check the attic for cats. I know what I heard. I know what I felt. They heard it too. But yeah, babe, sure, let's check the attic. The ghost cat activity always happens when our cat is asleep. So I jokingly came up with the conclusion that either Ryder astral projects in his sleep or we have a ghost cat. Not really sure what to do about it. Well, really, I'm not bothered by it, and I don't necessarily want to get rid of it. Mostly just wanted to share and see if there was anything I could do to make it more comfy. Thanks for reading. Number 5. Hello, I'm sorry. If maybe this isn't the right community to ask, but something happened very strange this evening. I was going to sleep with my 18-month-old boy at 3 p.m. In the room, I made a dark environment so that he can sleep. We fell asleep. I myself really went very deep into sleep since I was so tired. I had a long week. At 5 p.m. or so, my wife called me on Messenger. My phone was on silent, so it only vibrated. Took me a while to realize. But the strange thing, even if it wasn't with my face pointed at the side of the bed, I somehow saw a creature, hairy and a little with human-like face, but more whiter, running from beside our bed into the room where the Christmas tree is. Strange fact that it looked like the night hag from that sleep paralysis painting I found online. I felt like he watched us sleep, which is strange. More strange is that when my boy got up at 2 minutes later, he was looking at the window. Even if he couldn't see outside, he saw the room dark and began to say, "Boo, boo," and he was irritated by something and kept looking at the window or the corner of the room where the furniture is, and he climbed on the pillow close to my head. Anyways, I know it's a sleep paralysis-like reference, but how can that be possible since I never got into that state? I woke up moving instantly, trying to reach my phone, which was in my pocket. What could it have been? I also never had a sleep paralysis, and I consider myself a very open-minded person. I know a lot of strange things, and I mean a lot. Thanks for your time. Number 6. I saw wizards. What do I mean by that? There are such things as Sasquatch, dragons, fairies, gnomes, and wizards because I've seen them. These, lastly, have a story to tell. I was visited by wizards when I was a toddler and just beginning preschool or younger. I remember when I was around that age, I was scared by my uncle in a disguise up to the point of making a magical explosion as an accident. Wizards appear offering to me to a school just like Harry Potter. Since I live in Mexico, they took me to a Ivermorny, not Hogwarts. It is a very creepy place. North American wizard, especially from the magical government, abuse a spell that produces a blue poison capable of undoing magic. They dress themselves in that foggy energy, and it is sickening. I got eventually expelled from the place for asking about limerence and refusing mental control spells on me. I still possess the ability to see rarely the magical world. The magical governor in North America, with their poison, can make a wizard unable to perform magic permanently. They did the procedure on me, but it never worked. Yet, it has me feel weak. I was abused by these wizards by being followed and spied on. They are paranoid about staying secret. They even made spells to impede me from using my magic like a cage. Even though I cannot manifest in the physical world, I still can affect only spirit. What surprises me most is how arrogant and narcissistic the magical government was. Once I could not fit in their model of a perfect brainwashed follower, I was thrown in the trash, and they tried to erase magic from myself. And they did this spell even on a toddler. Number 7. So a bunch of years ago, when I was around 15, I was having things start happening and I didn't know why, what any of it was. The only thing I want to say or ask, which has been on my mind to try to figure out, what is this? It happened a couple of nights, not quite back to back, but had this little creature jump up at the foot of my bed. I can't really describe it too well as it's years back now, but it had a higher pitched voice, not quite a kid, not quite a grown up. But the biggest thing that it would do is ask me questions throughout the night. The biggest one that it would ask me about was my name, which I did not say any of those times it asked, and would always tilt its head whenever it asked it. I would never really move out of that spot, and I would always be around, and it would always be around the same time. There were times that I was trying to fall asleep and ignore that. It wasn't there. But then it would keep asking me more and more questions like, "Do you hear me? Are you tired? Are you trying to go to sleep?" Again, I wouldn't answer it at all this time. The last time I remember seeing it is when I started responding by saying, "Hi there, I don't want to talk tonight, maybe some other time." It didn't say anything and just felt it staying there. I don't remember anything else after that. I know I'm also new here, but I want to mainly see if anyone else has had the same thing or something similar, because I want to find out what it could have been. My wife says maybe a fairy or a fae, but I feel like it looked way different than what they would look like. These were some weird, crazy stories. I hope y'all enjoyed these. I will see y'all this Saturday for creepypasta time. I love y'all so much. Remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross